Hi guys, it's Mrs. Galvin again. I am here to read the second part of Chapter 6, The Journey from Platform 9 and 3/4 from Harry Potter, Book 1. We left off, because this chapter was extremely long, we left off where we have met Ron, so a new friend for Harry, and we have another couple of students that have kind of come in asking to help find a toad that a boy named Neville has lost, and we meet Hermione. We're going to continue. There's only a little bit of pages left to go on this chapter, and we're going to see where he gets to, hopefully arriving at the school by the end of this chapter. So we're going to jump right back in. So she had told them to get changed into their robes because they were going to be arriving at Hogwarts soon. Okay. She left, taking the toadless boy with her. Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it, said Ron. He threw his wand back into his trunk. Stupid spell. George gave it to me. I bet he knew it was a dud. What houses are your brothers in? Asked Harry. Gryffindor, said Ron. Gloom seemed to be settling on him again. Mom and Dad were in it too. I don't know what they'll say if I'm not. I don't suppose Ravenclaw would be too bad, but imagine if they put me in Slytherin. That's the house you know who was in? Yeah, said Ron. He flopped back into his seat, looking depressed. You know, I think the ends of Scabbers' whiskers are a bit lighter, said Harry, trying to take Ron's mind off houses. So what do your oldest brothers do now that they've left anyway? Harry was wondering what a wizard did once he finished school. Charlie's in Romania studying dragons, and Bill's in Africa doing something for Gringotts, said Ron. Did you hear about Gringotts? It's been all over the Daily Prophet. But I don't suppose you get that with the Muggles. Someone tried to rob a high-security vault. Harry stared. Really? What happened to them? Nothing. That's why it's such big news. They haven't been caught. My dad says it must have been a powerful dark wizard to get around Gringotts. But they didn't think they took anything. That's what's odd. Of course, everyone gets scared when something like this happens, in case you know who's behind it. Harry turned this news over in his mind. He was starting to get a prickle of fear every time you know who was mentioned. He supposed this was all part of entering the magic world, but it had been a lot more comfortable saying Voldemort without worrying. What's your Quidditch team? Ron asked. I don't know any, Harry confessed. What? Ron looked dumbfounded. Oh, you wait. It's the best game in the world. And he was off explaining all about the 4 balls and the positions of the 7 players, describing famous games he'd been to with his brothers and the broomstick he'd like to get if he had the money. He was just taking Harry through the finger points of the game when the compartment door slid open yet again. But it wasn't Neville the toadless boy or Hermione Granger this time. 3 boys entered, and Harry recognized the middle one at once. It was the pale boy from Madame Malkin's robe shop. He was looking at Harry with a lot more interest than he'd shown back in Diagon Alley. Is it true, he said? They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment. So it's you, isn't it? Yes, said Harry. He was looking at the other boys. Both of them were thick-set and looked extremely mean. Standing on either side of the pale boy, they looked like bodyguards. Oh, this is Crabbe and this is Goyle, said the pale boy, carelessly noticing where Harry was looking. And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snicker. Draco Malfoy looked at him. Do you think my name's funny? Do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford. He turned back to Harry. You'll soon find out that some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there. He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry didn't take it. I think I can tell who the wrong sort are for myself, thanks, he said coolly. Draco Malfoy didn't go red, but a pink tinge appeared on his pale cheeks. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter, he said slowly. Unless you're a bit politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them either. You hang around with riffraff like the Weasleys and that Hagrid, and it'll rub off on you. Both Harry and Ron stood up. Say that again, Ron said, his face as red as his hair. Oh, are you going to fight us, are you? Malfoy sneered. Unless you get out now, said Harry, more bravely than he felt. But we don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food, and you still seem to have some. Goyle reached toward the chocolate frogs next to Ron, and Ron leapt forward, but before he'd so much as touched Goyle, Goyle let out a horrible yell. Scabbers the rat was hanging off of his fingers, sharp little teeth sunk deep into Goyle's knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers around and round, howling, and when Scabbers finally flew off and hit the window, all 3 of them disappeared at once. Perhaps they thought they were more rats lurking among the sweets, or perhaps they'd heard footsteps because a second later Hermione Granger had come in. What has been going on? She said, looking at the sweets all over the floor. and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. "I think he's been knocked out," Ron said to Harry. He looked close at Scabbers. "No, I don't believe it. He's gone back to sleep." "And so he had. You've met Malfoy before?" Harry explained about their meeting in Diagon Alley. "I've heard of his family," said Ron darkly. "They were some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared, since they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. He says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side." He turned to Hermione. "Can we help you with something?" "You'd better hurry up and put your robes on. I've just been up to the front to ask the conductor, and he says we're nearly there. You haven't been fighting, have you? You'll be in trouble before we even get there." "Scabbers has been fighting for us." "Would you mind leaving while we change?" "All right. I only came in here because people outside are behaving very childishly, racing up and down the corridors. And you've got dirt on your nose, by the way. Did you know?" Ron glared at her as she left, and Harry peered out the window. It was getting dark. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. The train did seem to be slowing down. He and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long, black robes. Ron's were a bit short for him, and you could see his sneakers underneath. A voice echoed through the train. "We'll be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately." Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. People pushed their way toward the door and out to a tiny dark platform. Harry shivered in the cold night air, and then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. First years over here." "All right there, Harry." Hagrid's big, hairy face beamed over the sea of heads. "Come on, follow me. Any more first years? Mind your step now. First years, follow me." Slipping and stumbling, they followed Hagrid down what seemed to be a steep, narrow path. It was so dark on either side of them that Harry thought there must be thicker trees there. Nobody spoke much. Neville, the boy who kept losing his toes, sniffed once or twice. "You'll get your first sights of Hogwarts in a sec," Hagrid called over his shoulder, "just around this bend here." There was a loud ooh, and the narrow path had opened suddenly into the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. "No more than 4 to a boat," Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water by the shore. Harry and Ron were followed into their boat by Neville and Hermione. "Everyone in?" shouted Hagrid, who had a boat to himself. "Right then, forward." And the fleet of little boats moved off all at once, gliding across the lake, which was as smooth as glass. Everyone was silent, staring up at the castle overhead. It towered over them as they sailed nearer and nearer to the cliff on which it stood. "Heads down!" yelled Hagrid as the first boat reached the cliff. They all bent their heads, and the little boats carried them through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening to the cliff face. They were carried along a dark tunnel which seemed to be taking them right underneath the castle until they reached a kind of underground harbor, where they clambered out onto the rocks and pebbles. "Oi, you there! Is this your toad?" said Hagrid, who was checking the boats as people climbed out of them. "Trevor!" cried Neville blissfully, holding out his hands. Then they clambered up a passageway in the rock after Hagrid's lamp, coming out at last onto smooth, damp grass right in the shadow of the castle. They walked up a flight of stone steps and crowded around the huge oak front door. "Everyone here? You there, still got your toad?" Hagrid raised a gigantic fist and knocked 3 times on the castle door. Okay, so that was the end of the chapter. We will be moving into the next 3 chapters next week. Make sure that if you have not read, make sure you, watch the videos in order. Don't skip ahead to the other ones. You're going to miss parts of the story. But I hope you're enjoying our Harry Potter read aloud, and I will see you next week. Bye, guys.